This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a senior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
And back for another episode is Luz. Luz, what is it? How many episodes have you been on the podcast for now?
That would require me to do math and basic addition, so I'm not too sure.
Over under on 5 or 10? What do we got on that?
I want to say around 5, up 5.
Above 5, right? We're somewhere in there. Yeah, you're a pro. We'll introduce everybody. Remind everybody who you are if they haven't listened to your other episodes.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Luz, and I'm a senior studying computer engineering and computer science from Bell Gardens, California.
All right. Now we are, with full transparency, we're all coming from a number of different places right now. One, I have a plumber here at my house because we had a pipe burst next to our water heater this morning, which is fun. And so he's clanging around out there. And my dog is barking. So if you hear my dog barking, it's because I'm trying to keep her calm next to me. So I apologize if you hear any growling or barking because she's very protective. And then Audrey, you blew something up in your lab. Is that right? What happened? I'm sorry.
I spilled some water, basically.
Spilled some water.
I've run back from it.
So we're a little disjointed right now. But Luz, we're here for you, and you brought us an episode. Tell us what is going on with this particular episode that you're bringing us today.
Yeah. So I am currently taking RIT 340. And I was
writing 340, right?
Writing 340. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not RIT 340, but writing 340. Yes, sure, got it.
And my professor is Elisa Warford, and she works under the Viterbi School of Engineering, and she actually teaches writing, which is, I think, a skill that isn't shined enough light on. It's super duper important, especially as an engineer, to be able to not only have technical prowess, but also have the verbal and written communication skills that you need to get those ideas across. So we talked all about that and how especially important it is, specifically when we're talking about emerging technologies, specifically in the climate change and sustainability realm, to kind of convince people to get them on board and get them excited for technology. Right.
So to catch everybody up, there are 2 writing classes that are required of all students at USC: writing 150 and writing 340. Writing 150 is your first year writing class, which is different topics typically that you get to choose. And writing 340 is always based on your major. And so your major being engineering and computer science, I believe the class is called Advanced Communication for Engineers. Is yes, that the specific title of the class?
The full name, correct.
And give us a quick run through as to what gets covered. Because if you think from a high school perspective, they think of English classes. What's covered in writing 340? What do you go through?
Okay, this is exciting because I just turned in a big project and I'm actually pretty excited about the class.
Sweet.
So
of course,
my class is
talking. Sorry, of course that starts happening. Go ahead.
I love that. Dog cam. My class actually is a special focus class on climate change and sustainability, which is something that I always wanted to take a class in, and writing just kind of fit into that, and it was perfect. And we kind of go through, obviously there's going to be some writing tips and like how to switch from passive to active voice and all kind of general writing tips, but a lot of it will also be kind of analyzing existing technical writing and also analyzing research that exists out there and using it to kind of craft our own writing. To give an example, I just submitted like a 3,000 word paper on kind of the sustainability of nuclear energy, and if you use sustainability as an ethical framework and define what it means for something to be sustainable, how does nuclear energy kind of stack up there? So just to give kind of an example of the stuff we're doing. Yeah.
Very
really
cool. And then Professor Warford is fantastic. She's one of my favorite. I know her quite well. So it's really great to have her on the podcast. Let's get out of the way, Luz. Hand it over to you and Professor Warford to talk about Advanced Communication for Engineers, writing 340.
let's start it from the top. Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now to our listeners at home, because we do have listeners who can't see my fancy Zoom UI and everything and don't know who you are and you're an unfamiliar voice, can you go ahead and give us like a little introduction, like who you are and like kind of what you do?
Sure. I am Elisa Warford, and I am an associate professor in the engineering writing program, where I teach engineering writing classes, the Writing 340 class that the upper division, it's the upper division writing requirement for all USC students. And I, along with my colleagues in the program, teach the engineering version of that class. And then I also teach a class on the ethics of science and technology, in addition to the writing classes.
Cool. Very, very interesting stuff. If any listener were to go and like Google you and like click on your faculty profile, it says that you're a technical writer. And this is actually not a word that I knew what it, like words, I guess, plural, that I didn't know what that was until I was actually like a junior in college. It was a very unfamiliar word to me. So to our uninitiated, would you like to give us like your own definition of what is technical writing?
Yeah, so I do technical editing for like on engineering writing, and technical writing is a component of sort of what we teach in the Writing 340 classes, but actually it would be a stretch to say that they're purely technical writing classes. So technical writing, sort of a narrow definition of that is you write like documentation or instructions or, software documentation. You like write, you explain like processes. And you as a student in the Writing 340 class know that that's not all that we're doing. So in the Writing 340 classes, we call it more engineering communication to try to cover like a multitude of the types of writing that that students will be doing as engineering. And so as engineers. And so, and then also it's sort of like professional writing in general too, because a lot of the concepts and principles we teach could apply to just business writing or, a lot of different fields. But we want our students to be able to write with precision and highly and organized. And then also I think that you can think of technical writing as a form of rhetoric. It's, and the engineering writing that you're doing is a form of persuasion. And it's, even though it's easy to think of like, oh, the data, they're objective and the data speak for themselves, and science writing and engineering writing is just sort of an objective presentation of the data. That's not really true. You're still selecting the data, right? And you're organizing it and you're presenting it in a way to support your interpretation of the data. And rather than, it's not like persuasion, like you write a position paper or you write an op-ed for a newspaper, but you're still trying to persuade your audience, which might be a technical professional audience, to sort of accept the validity of your data, and how you got your data, that made sense and that you ran your tests in a well-designed way. And then also the interpretation of the data, because we like to say that, I did already say this, that the data speak for themselves, but really they don't. Like really you have to interpret the data. And so that's still a form of persuasion. And so you always have to sort of consider your audience and what forms of evidence they're going to find persuasive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll jump around here on my questions a bit, because we're on this thread of kind of what it means for this nonverbal component of communication to be involved with kind of engineering and science. And, for many many students who might be like new or unfamiliar with engineering, sometimes there's this like limited scope of like, engineering is math, science,
Right.
and technical prowess, and that's it. That's all it takes. So I guess in your opinion, or I guess in terms of in the context of your experiences, like in what ways do you think writing and technical writing and scientific persuasive writing has an effect on how engineering is done, or do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, for sure. For one thing, sadly, students who think, "Oh, I'm going to be an engineer, I don't need to know how to write." Well, sadly, that's just not true. And in fact, the higher up sort of you get, the more time you spend communicating. And so, yeah, sorry to disabuse students of that myth, because you always, it's not going to do you any good to have these, do these well-designed tests and validate your data if you can't communicate it, if then nobody can understand. And so, truth be told, you don't have to be a super writer or communicator to have a fine engineering career. So like, just allay that fear. But because it is sort of persuasion, if you can communicate your ideas clearly, whether you're, pitching ideas to a manager or an investor, or to the public or to a government, agency, then you're going to have a leg up. And, one of the things, employers know that any Viterbi student, graduate is going to be solid in the technical skills, but it's like the communication skills that can, I think, set you apart and kind of propel your career. Faster.
And just to kind of like add the student perspective to that, again, I'm a senior now. I've done a couple of internships here and there, like at major tech companies, and like, even before like landing those jobs and everything, I would have to write like, answer questions, like some of the application, like for the job, I needed to like, why do you like computer science? And that's such a broad question. And, I just had to learn to be articulate. And, again, goes kind of hand in hand with like learning to sell yourself, kind of carries all persuasion, right? Persuasion.
Right. A job application, of course, is just pure persuasion.
Had to write a project proposal this week. And I was like, wait, I haven't written actual words in a minute. So that was fun. Mm-hmm. So turn it around a little bit more to your experiences. I just want, before I forget, I want to ask if there are anything you've worked on that's been like super interesting, or examples of work that you've done within like the engineering field as an editor, as a writer.
I would just say sort of it's my PhD is in English and in American literature, and so it's been a crooked path to get to Viterbi, and so I've just enjoyed. It's really interesting to me sort of to read in these like journal articles or proposals, kind of that the overall goal is to sort of help society. And so I've done a lot of work on like environmental engineering technologies, like recovering waste heat, or cooling technologies that use less power. I've done work on like nuclear risk assessment. I might have mentioned this we talked about this in class the other day. Sure. And it's been really interesting to see sort of just the very different way that engineers perceive risk from the way the public perceives risk. Like in like nuclear technology, for the engineers, it's probabilistic risk assessment, and it's very quantifiable, and the public just sees Fukushima, Daiichi accident, and no more nuclear power. And so again, sort of communication has to comes into that. So it's not really, it's sort of an outdated view that the engineers just have to say like, oh, trust us, don't worry, we're engineers, you can trust us and you'll be safe. Like I think more of the current research is looking at sort of a more of a dialogue, like that a dialogue with the public on those kinds of issues of risk, where the engineers really take seriously the public's, fears and opinions, and doesn't just dismiss them as being, oh, well, that's just silly, we have the numbers. But finding a way to engage and allow the public to have meaningful input, and for there to be, kind of this two-way respect between the two different groups. Again, that's like communication, and how do you facilitate that kind of dialogue?
I really like the word dialogue that you use there, because I think it's easy, it could be very easy even for me to be trapped in my little viterbi engineering bubble, and I'm like, yeah, everyone I'm talking to is engineers, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Nope, they're not like that, especially in the real world. So it's a great segue to kind of like the next kind of more topical question that I wanted to ask. And you probably you kind of covered it a little bit, but I just wanted you to expand on this. But we know each other from your topical class on climate change and sustainability, which I'm greatly enjoying. And I know you teach an ethics class as well. So I guess on that thread, in what ways is like writing kind of especially important when you're talking about technologies that people are unsure of, or new innovative stuff that has never been seen before? I feel like it has to be important because again, communication with the public, so much non-technical audience. I don't know if you want to kind of like expand on what it means to kind of write about things that are new and kind of scary and never been seen before.
Yeah, and certainly like with new kind of energy technologies like nuclear, or I think it's important for engineers to or any writers really to identify common values, and so to identify the values of the audience, and figure out ways to frame the argument in terms of those values. And so with climate change, for example, I mean, climate change communication is a huge area of its own study, right? Because especially in the US, it's been so hard to convince people about the urgency of this problem and the significance of the problem. And so they've done really interesting studies. The Yale Climate Communications Center has done interesting studies that even for people who deny, think that climate change is a hoax, that even they think it's a good idea to invest more in renewable energies. And so if you can identify those places where we share these values, then you can build your argument on that. So someone might present, I don't know, an idea for a proposal for a solar farm, not based on climate change, but just based on sort of economic, investment and economic gains and things like that. So I think, again, when you're communicating with the public, again, sort of figuring out their values, and not that you want, I mean, there's you don't want to be manipulative or deceptive about it, or just sort of use, them, but identifying those common values and basing your arguments on that.
Yeah, I think, I'm glad you gave such a great answer, because I think it's really important for people to hear that, especially prospective students. I know USC tends to attract a crowd of, because, grand challenges. I don't know if you are familiar with like the engineering grand challenges. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of the culture on campus. And so many people are attracted to that stuff, little innovators. But, it's also important to think outside of just the technical and, how are you actually going to get that idea off the ground,
Yeah.
Strong communication for sure.
Yeah, right. Because like we looked at in the class, just the technological fix isn't enough. It's got to be the technology and the public acceptance of it and the economic feasibility of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's not going to be implemented.
Right, for sure. And that's something people, the sooner you internalize that, the sooner you can start thinking of cooking up great ideas that can actually fulfill and check all those boxes.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap it up here, I know that many students, as particularly the engineering ones, can be fearful of their upper division writing classes. They're all like, oh man, math and science is my forte. I chose this for a reason. I thought, and you can't get out of it at USC. Sorry, you're gonna take a writing class.
Right. I know USC does not let you get out of it, which I think is great.
It's great. So as from a professor's perspective, what would you say to people who are kind of nervous about their writing classes, not coming from a background of math and science and stuff like that? How would you allay their fears?
Yeah, no, I get that a lot. Like we hear that a lot. But I mean, and the first thing is that writing is a skill. It's not just a talent that you're either born with or without, and you can't get better. I mean, I've gotten to be a much better writer, like I continue to improve. And so you can work on it and you can improve your skills. It takes attention to that, and it takes practice, but you can definitely improve your skills. So even if you think you're starting at sort of a low level, which honestly is often not really the case with USC students, there are ways to improve. And in my classes, I really try to kind of demystify that and give you some really concrete tools that you can use to improve your writing. But I often find on my student evaluations that students will confess that they were dreading taking this class and that they put it off to their last semester at USC. And but that they find that they actually really enjoyed it a lot more than they thought they would, which is, I feel like, sort of a backhanded compliment. I'm not sure, oh, okay, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. But I think one reason is that in the engineering writing classes that you get to write about topics that are engineering related and about topics that are interesting to you. And so even in a class like my climate change class, that's still a very broad field, right? And so students are often able to, and I try to give a lot of leeway in the assignment topics, and students find, I think, that when they're writing about something that's really interesting to them, that it comes a lot easier. And then I also think that engineering writing often follows a pretty specific, genre. And so that also kind of helps, I think, give students some structure so that they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have nothing, I don't know how to begin, I don't know how to start, I don't know what this is supposed to look like. But I try to sort of point out kind of some broad structures that they can use for their papers. But they do, I think that a lot of times, students really enjoy digging a little deeper into some of the topics and technologies, and it tends to be not as bad as they think it's going to be.
You heard it here first, folks. Why are you scared? don't be. It's a skill. I feel like people forget that they've been writing since they were kids. You can't be that bad at it. Come on.
Yeah.
The world is bigger than just equations and rules and laws, physical laws. So it's good to hear from a writing professor, because I think this is the first time we've kind of unpacked this topic, and it's such a big part. People talk about their writing classes as engineers, oh my god, I'm so scared, but I'm glad that we got to demystify it a little bit, and kind of also cover how important writing is from an innovation standpoint. So really, thank you so much for your time. And I think this was really great.
Well, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Luz, for this one. I know when we kind of initially started talking about this episode, I thought it was super exciting because I think Writing 340 is kind of unique to USC in terms of an engineering program that definitely emphasizes communication as a core tenet sort of our degree.
Luz, when you were going into 340 versus you're in it now, you're kind of going through this process right now. What's something that was unexpected about the class that you're in right now? Of given what you thought about the class going into it versus kind of what you're doing right now.
Honestly, I was a little surprised about how collaborative it was. The class itself is kind of small, so I want to say there's only like anywhere from 15 to 20 of us, and I actually do get a lot of FaceTime with my peers, and it's been pretty great to kind of hear them talk about research that they're doing. And you could tell that a lot of the people in the class are super invested about climate change and sustainability and all the technology revolving that. So it's been really great to kind of interface with my peers and also kind of use them as, again, we do a lot of peer reviews, we do a lot of talking. So using them to kind of leverage my own ideas. And it's been great. I've really liked how much time I've been able to spend with my peers.
And then Audrey, did you take 340 on the overseas program?
No, I did not. I took Writing 340 the fall of my junior year. So kind of a similar semester-long class to Luz, and my professor was Professor Amy Schrader. So she is also housed under the Viterbi School of Engineering as a writing professor. And I think one thing too that to kind of pull out from the class is the emphasis on presenting. So I know in my class, each one of our papers, especially towards the end of the course, came along with a presentation, which I think is super important. I know in mechanical engineering, we get that in a lot of our upper division courses, but this is like such a critical skill in industry to be able to present an idea succinctly and quickly in a way that kind of convinces your audience, right? Like telling stories is so important, even in engineering, so.
Absolutely. And I've said it before, but I often think that the world's worst engineer is one of the greatest ideas, but unable to communicate it to others. And communication is so key, not just being able to talk to somebody, but effectively, give out ideas and have a back and forth and critical analysis of ideas and in writing as well. The idea of being able to communicate via writing and give those reports, speaking to a technical audience and a non-technical audience. These are learned skill sets and something that has to be adapted and constantly paid attention to. So I'm glad you all have that understanding of 340. Exciting part about 342 is it's kind of the basis of our brand new summer overseas programs that we'll be launching when we come out of COVID. Writing 340 will be the first sets of classes that we'll launch with what we're calling spring tails and fall leads. And what this means is that it's not enrolling in a different summer semester. It's actually enrolling in your typical spring semester of writing 340, let's say, and then you have a whole month of May of travel and cultural experiences afterward, or the flip. That's the spring tail. The fall lead would be you travel in the month of August and you take those experiences and put them into your writing class in the fall semester. First one's already been approved and ready to go for Berlin for fall 2021. So this upcoming summer we'll run our first fall lead. Now, granted, it's been approved curricularly, but it's whether it is safe to do so and deemed safe to do so by a number of different agencies, that's a whole other question. But we're already running that. Or getting that ready to run, I should say, in the coming months. So this is exciting, and 340 is a big part of that. So awesome stuff, you all. Luz, thank you so much for bringing this, and I hope you all are keeping as well as you possibly can be and staying safe. And for all of you out there that are listening, hang tight. I know for those of you that are waiting for admission decisions, we will be still reading applications right now, still making sure that we get our first year admission decisions out by the end of March, no later than April 1st. I don't have an exact date for you, but no later than April 1st. And for those of you that applied as a transfer student, we're still reading our first year applications. We'll get to as soon as we can, and we can expect to have a admission decision or a request for a request for spring grades by the end of May. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.